Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name's Samantha White. I'm the Marketing Manager in the MBA Recruitment and Admissions team. And today I'm joined by my colleagues James Henton, who's the Employer Engagement Manager for Global Industry in our Careers team, and John Madgwick, who's the Head of Finance Careers. Before I get the guys to introduce themselves and kick off with today's webinar, can I just check that everyone can hear me okay? Can you please just type yes into the box if you can hear me and hopefully see, wonderful, thanks everyone. And hopefully see James's slides that he's got ready to go. And yeah, looks like everyone can hear us loud and clear, so we're good to go. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the intro, Sam, much appreciated. So welcome everyone to supporting your MBA career exploration today. Before we get going, I suppose I should do some introductions. My name's James Henton. As Sam mentioned, I'm Employer Engagement Manager within the Global Industries team in our Career Development Centre. I mainly look after technology employers. I've been with the school now over 4 years, sort of around 3 of which has been within the Career Development Centre. For my sins, I am an ex-recruiter, both in-house and agency, so I have a fairly good understanding of the recruitment market and marketplace and how all processes work for you, lovely MBAs who will be joining us in September. I'll pass over to John to do a quick introduction as well.
Thank you, James, and welcome everybody to the webinar. Thanks very much for joining. I am John Madgwick. I started life at the business school 5 years ago in July 2015, and I look after finance careers. So any MBA student, any Masters of Financial Economics student, MBA student that is either trying to forge or continuing to forge a career in the broad gamut of financial services sort of comes under my remit. I sort of wear 2 hats, if you like. I'm very much student facing in terms of one-to-one career support and helping you with your career journeys. And I also look after and engage with global employers in the financial services arena. Prior to coming to the business school in 2015, I had 15 years on the market side of investment banking in the city in London. I then crossed the Rubicon and went into recruitment, both agency recruitment and in-house recruitment. And just prior to joining Saïd, I was the head of recruitment at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the EBRD.
Great, thanks for that intro, John, much appreciated. So today we have some slides for you to run through basically what we help you with at the Career Development Centre and how we can support your career journey through your time with us. We will have kind of certain slides and time for Q&A at the end. If I can just make a polite request in terms of your questions when they come through, if they can be relevant perhaps to the area we're talking about, that would be much appreciated, so we can hopefully work through those in a structured manner and answer your questions as they come along. Also, if they can be questions that potentially are going to benefit your MBA colleagues, so something that's very specific about you as an individual, if we can hold those questions maybe for another time where you can interact with us on a one-to-one basis rather than a very specific question that might not be relevant for everyone. So that would be absolutely great. So let's get going on to our first slide. So first of all, we're going to kind of quickly talk about employer engagement, really, which is an area I look after in particular. As you can see here, we've got some employers we work with. This isn't an extensive list, but this kind of gives you hopefully an idea of the sort of employers we've been working with from global industry, finance, and the consulting arena. As you'll see on the left-hand side, we're talking about the hiring streams you can see there. So these 3 hiring streams are fairly consistent throughout the global industry, consulting, and finance arenas. So when we talk about program hiring, you might also hear that called structured hiring, where employers have a structured MBA program, which would sort of take you through maybe 3 or 4 roles within that business, or you rotate around the business doing different roles while you're there. In terms of timings and when that works, it starts immediately from when you're actually on campus. So John will come on to this a bit later in finance, and I will talk more about global industry specifically, but it's kind of from September onwards, maybe before you're even on campus, you need to be doing your research and ensuring that you're aware of the deadlines for these certain companies. That typically takes up Michaelmas term. At Oxford, we do call the term something very strange rather than kind of summer, spring or winter terms. But Michaelmas term is our first term on site until Christmas. So lots of the programme hiring will happen during that time in terms of interviews, presentations, and then you'll be hearing in the new year if you've been sort of selected to partake in interviews. The internship hiring season is actually kind of now, if that makes sense. So that tends to kick off for us in global industry anyway, around February time, where you'll be able to apply for internships, both that we will advertise and will be available more widely for you to apply to throughout the world. And that will kind of obviously kick off over your summer term once you are placed in an internships. And then we have experienced hire, which typically comes towards maybe May time, I would say is probably a better time to be looking at that. But those are broadly kind of 3 areas of hiring, which the majority of these companies do kind of fit into in some way, if that makes sense. This obviously isn't an exhaustive list, but hopefully that gives you an idea of the type of companies we have been working for recently. So this is a very common question we get around the varied paths to finding a job and what that means. So we obviously have on-campus hiring, and that takes many forms really. So we have a lot of employers who are coming on campus to do employer presentations, networking with you guys. We have careers fairs, case competitions. We will have employers who come on site maybe to do lunches. Amazon, for instance, frequently do a women in business lunch, where they bring some of their senior female leaders to the business school, and then many of you would have the opportunity to network and speak with them. We also have expert speaker series as well. So that would be someone who wants to share, maybe an alumni of the school or someone who's maybe close to the Saïd community who will want to come and share their experience and expertise with you, be that technical or maybe how they've developed their MBA career. So that's typically the on-campus opportunities. Job postings and internships, we do have a lot of that. So before you're here, you will have access to you'll have logons before you arrive, but our Oscar system. This is a portal in which you can check for job postings, see what's going on in the community. You can apply for jobs on this system. It can take you straight through directly to employers' sort of applicant tracking systems for you to apply. This is going to be a really kind of key thing for you to get to grips with when you are on campus. But we'll be hopefully helping you get those jobs and see those postings. But also it's about you taking your ownership as well to look at looking to find those employers who you want to be working for. Networking is also a really key area, which is going to be something which you will need to get to grips with while you're here. We will obviously be helping you with this. I know many people, they're not necessarily confident networkers, or they need some help in these areas. We obviously support you to give you the tools to be able to do that and network efficiently, not just in person, but things such as LinkedIn are ever more present now to make sure you are getting in contact with people you need to. And one final thing on the path to finding a job is the resume books and candidate search. So on the system which you will have access to, not only can you find jobs, but employers can come and find you. So later, and I think this is probably around an August time, we have a deadline, which is to submit your resume to go in our resume books. If you want to potentially be found by employers, this is an excellent way for you to kind of begin your career journey. So if you want to be part of our resume book, get your CV online and into our systems as soon as you are able to. We will send out emails and communications to you to make sure you know the deadlines and everything there. if you're not in the resume book, you kind of don't have that chance to be automatically found by employers who want resume books. And candidate searches, effectively, they can type in a keyword to our system from your experience and track down MBAs who have got that experience in our cohort. So I'd say if I were you, I'd be really keen to be in that resume book. I know we've had employers who have been making offers this year purely based on going through the CV book when you've arrived and then putting out calls to those people to arrange interviews. So that's kind of a really key thing for you to be a part of. So the overarching thing really to finding a job is we are here to give you the tools to do this. We are not here to do it for you. It is your career search and your career journey. I'm sure that each and every one of you has a different story to tell and has different experience with regards to that.
Just one additional note on networking, guys. You'll hear us talking a lot about networking, and it means different things to different people, and we can talk a little bit more about that at different times. But the more networking you do, the better placed you will be to securing what you want to secure. And that networking should start well in advance of your arrival in Oxford and continue and accelerate whilst you are on the programme. If you think about it, by far the biggest access to jobs is the hidden job market, the market that isn't, the job market that isn't advertised. And not only is it bigger, but it tends to be, if you can network, easier, in the sense that, if you could imagine applying to an advertised job, you know immediately you're going to be in big competition. So the more networking you can do, the more access you will probably get to slightly more niche roles based on your skill set rather than sort of advertised skill sets.
Cool, thanks, John. Based on some questions that are coming in, I'm going to quickly flick through to the questions. I've seen a question from Anderson around the downturn. I don't know really what you mean by downturn, if you're referring to the current virus situation or not, but at the moment, structured hiring and offers are solid as they were before this was happening, if that makes sense. Dan, your question about 1+1s. I believe, John, and correct me if I'm wrong, 1+1s can speak to us before they start on campus. Is that correct?
Yes, they can. I think there is a slight delay to it. I think you start talking to us sort of later on in Michaelmas or early Hillary term, which is the second term. But whereas this is our first year of engaging 1+1s on a more constructed and strategic basis in your first master's year as opposed to your second MBA year. So yes, you'll get support.
I'll quickly pepper on a couple more and then we'll go back to the slides. But with regards to someone to tailoring resumes, that's a common question, so I'll address that one. You will have access to our online careers academy from June. And in this careers academy, it talks you through CVs, how they should be put together, and how all that comes together. When you're submitting your CV to our resume books, we also have a CV tool where you need to get a certain score for your CV to pass to go in the resume book. So that will help you in terms of getting that done and getting that up to scratch. What I will do, so I'm just having a quick look again, that was about CVs there. CVs workshops are on site with us when you get here. There's obviously the pre-arrival work, which we'll talk about more later. But what I will do is I will move on now, otherwise we're going to get bogged down in questions. John.
Yeah, so this slide here is really telling you how we divide the world within the career development team. So clearly I look after the finance services arena. I work very closely with Sean Toomey, who's a sort of dedicated business development, employer engagement guy, and Ben Leslie, who's a sort of like me, who wears two hats. James is part of the global industry team, which is loosely defined as everything that isn't finance and consulting. Then we have a separate team run by a lady called Sarah Pratt that looks after the consulting arena, and overlapping that is the impact space. We do have a dedicated careers advisor that focuses on the sort of social impact arena, foundations, non-for-profit, social finance, that type of area. But increasingly, we know that clearly impacts finance, and it impacts consulting, and it impacts global industry in terms of ECG teams and etc. So it tends to sort of touch on every aspect of those core three arenas. So that's how we tend to split it up. But you get sort of common support from all those sectors via the Career Foundations program, which is our program designed to give you access to skills shops, workshops, etc., skills sessions that runs throughout the calendar year, and they're there to give you support for any of those areas, and obviously overlaid on top of that are the more specialist things applicable to each arena.
Cool, thanks, John. So I suppose with this one, global industry, as John mentioned, it's everything that's not finance or consulting, which is kind of my team. So within that team, we have myself, and I look after employer engagement specifically for technology, but also sort of in some broader areas as well. We have my colleague, Tom Lawrence. He's our head of global industry careers. We have Deb Finley, who is a career coach and employer engagement manager. Madeline Paler, who is the same career coach and employer engagement manager, and Dan Kiernan, who is also an engagement manager and career coach. So we've got a good sort of 5-strong team to help support you within the global industry sector. As you will see on the left-hand side of the slide, again, I'm not going to run through this anymore because I've already mentioned it in terms of program hiring, internships and experienced hire. Those are kind of the areas which we will be able to help support you in. But we also offer our specialist programs, and this is kind of, as John mentioned, the common support in all areas. But we do have kind of our own specialist programs. I've seen someone mention Finance Lab there, which John will come on to a little bit later. But we have the product management roadmap, which is something we have kind of developed as a kind of a co-curricular program, which helps those of you who are looking to develop your career and experience within the product management sphere. And this takes quite a lot of formats at different times of the year, actually. So we've sort of curated a list of product managers and senior product managers and product directors who are, some are alumni of the school, some are kind of friends of Oxford Saïd, if that makes sense, who want to give to our MBA community and help those develop their careers in product management. They come in and give talks, workshops, and help you get ready for your life in product management. So that's kind of broadly that program. There's obviously a little bit more to it. We've got DADMAP, which we're trying to think of a better name for it, but we can't at the moment. So that's the Data Analytics and Digital Marketing Pathway. That is a co-curricular program that we work with Professor Andrew Stephen, who's our L'Oreal Professor of Marketing. Within this pathway, it used to be just called the Digital Marketing Pathway, but given the focus on data and analytics, we've adapted this program. So we don't ever sort of rest on our laurels or stand still when it comes to these types of programs. We are looking to constantly review them and keep them up to date for our MBAs. But this is kind of a mix of, you kind of hear people in the product management or tech sphere where they say, we need coding skills, I haven't got SQL, or I don't know anything about Python, or my Excel's not as good as it needs to be. We run programs for you specifically for these. So even if you don't know how to program at all in SQL, we can put you on a workshop that takes you from knowing nothing to intermediate. And these are kind of a couple of day long workshops where you have to commit to a full day of learning. So it's quite intense, but what we want to do is give you those skills to succeed within that marketing and analytics kind of pipeline. So we will help and support you there. That's become very popular. Our interview skills workshops as well, and this is kind of across the board really, not so specifically to global industry, but with all of the different types of interviews that are out there, from case to fit to behavioural, we help you work through those and give you the skills you need to succeed. And as you'll see, we've got employer presentations, webinars, and that kind of thing. Those are consistent throughout all of our sectors. So I'm just trying to get that to move on. And consulting, John, did you want to quickly talk about that?
Yes, so similarly, really, for consulting careers, there is a focus on the different types of consultancies out there. So not just the MMB strategy consulting firms, but they are active within the programme, but also the Big Four management consultants, various boutique consulting firms. Obviously, there's internal strategy consulting roles, and increasingly impact consulting as well. And one of the programs that was developed a few years ago and gathers pace each year is the Consulting Development Program, which is, as you can see, a blended learning program that starts before you arrive with various background reading and preparation, and then continues when you're on campus in terms of the skill development and practice workshops, particularly around case, which is clearly a big element of the consulting interview process. Those are complemented again by company presentations, by webinars, by trips to London to see specific employers and networking on and outside campus as well.
Cool. Thanks.
I'm going to flip on to the next one. I'm slightly more comfortable with financial services. We talked a little bit about the hiring already. It should be noted that the banks still very much hire in the UK, certainly, from their internship pools. So unless you are, oven ready, you've already carved out a good career, let's say in investment banking, and you want to continue in investment banking, then you shouldn't be, if you've done that already, then fine, apply for full-time roles. If you haven't, you've got to go through the internship route, because banks turn first to their internship pool and then convert later. That's not the case for asset managers necessarily, and it's certainly not the case for the alternative asset managers, PE, VC, etc. But certainly for banking, you need to think about the internship route. And occasionally, even at MBA level, you will get some off-cycle hiring, but that is much dependent on market conditions at the time. And then, as we've already discussed, lateral hiring, which will kick in nearer the end of your program, sort of middle to end, because obviously you wouldn't be able to take up a role until you are out of the program anyway. What we're trying to do, and you'll sort of pick up on the theme, but I might as well spell it out anyway. What we're trying to do, as much as we can at the business school, is try and marry some of the academic content you get with some of the more practical aspects of the careers you aspire to. So James has already touched on some of the practical content of the DADMAT program, etc., for global industry. Well, it's just the same with the consulting development program, and in finance, it's sort of personified, if you like, by a number of different programs, including the finance lab. That is particularly good for those tilting at investment banking / PE type roles, so transactional businesses, if you like. But we also have an asset management masterclass, which runs throughout the first term. That was taught this last year by a guy called Nick Melhewish, who used to be the former global head of equities investment at UBS. That runs sort of once a week, every week, and gives you a really good, thorough sort of understanding of the practical aspects of investing. We run trading floor simulation days, where those of you thinking more about a sort of markets orientated career can try your hand in a very interactive and enjoyable way with an external firm that come in and run that over a weekend. They're the same people that train the traders and the sales traders people at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and other places like that. Again, similar to global industry, similar to consulting, we work closely with the OBNs, the Oxford Business Networks, which are our student-led clubs, and we put on employer presentations, webinars, treks to London around certain themes, etc., etc. Just on that last note, it's worth mentioning, it says on that last line there, and industry advisor presentations. Just a quick note on the industry advisors. They're a bunch of about 50, 55 consultants, if you like, that we work closely with. They're not employed by the university, they are working for themselves, but they're often people who are steeped in the industries that you are looking to target. So, for example, in finance, I work with somebody who's 25-year career at JP Morgan as managing director in investment banking. I work with somebody who runs his own private equity firm, used to be the former CIO of the Rothschild family office. I work with somebody else on the market side and asset management side who was managing director at Lehman Brothers for many years. So these are people that we work with, that you get access to, particularly when it comes to things like mock interviews, etc. But they also come in and they run sort of workshops and masterclasses to complement some of the other programs that we give you.
Cool, thanks, John. I'm going to dive into a couple of questions which are specifically around kind of Finance Lab and some of these ones at the moment. I've seen one there. Is it possible to pursue consulting from Josh as well as finance related roles? An overreach, I probably wouldn't call it that. I think about spending your time wisely as to where you want to end up, if I'm perfectly honest. I think the work in Finance Lab is quite full on, isn't it, John, in terms of what you're expected to do?
It's a big time commitment, the Finance Lab. The answer, Josh, is yes. You can do both, just about, but you need to be pretty superhuman and very, very organised. Wouldn't underestimate the amount of time it takes to be good in either one of those. So, because the timeline is slightly different, consulting hiring to bank hiring, it is possible, but it's a big ask. So you need to think quite carefully about it. Because in order to be, some people do start the Finance Lab, really like it, get hooked into it, apply, don't get anywhere with the few seats that are available in, let's say, in investment banking in London, and then switch their attention to consulting, which is fine, but you've got to remember you've got to work through 20, 30, 40 cases to make yourself as ready as you can be for the consulting interview process. So it's possible, but it's a big ask.
Yeah, definitely. I would second that, John. And in terms of sort of being in Oxford is an experience, if I'm honest. If you wanted to, this is my personal kind of thought, but if you wanted to just come to an institution that's going to just offer you an MBA, Oxford is so much more than that, given the networks, the community, the collegiate environment. It is really an experience, and people who come to Oxford, some can get caught up in sport, can get caught up in clubs, can get caught up in activities in their college, getting kind of just really immersing themselves also kind of with our other areas such as the Foundry, the Entrepreneurship Centre, getting involved with kind of Skull. There is so much to do at Oxford. So I would be really wary, as John mentioned, about knowing how much of a time commitment you can give to things, because it can be quite a lot to take in at Oxford. So it's not just about the MBA here. It's kind of very much the Oxford experience. I can also see a question about participating in multiple specialist programs. So product management and data analytics is two that were mentioned there. Absolutely. Those don't require as much time perhaps as the finance lab. It's more about kind of experiential learning while you're in the sessions. But I would say that definitely that's something that can be done. Let me just have a quick look in terms of some other bits and pieces. I'm just going to quickly go back to the top because you've got a lot of questions here. Some people asking about networking given the coronavirus situation. LinkedIn simply is a great tool for you to start mapping alumni, which you can do by going onto the business school's LinkedIn page. You can already see our alumni and go on and use that tool. It's fairly easy for you to start looking to make connections. A word of warning, please treat alumni with the respect you would like to be treated. I can't emphasize this enough, and sadly it happens every year, where people reach out to alumni and just say, oh, I see you work at Amazon, can you get me a job please? If you do that, you're not going to ever get a job at Amazon. Alumni will probably come back to me and say, who is this person? What are they doing? But can you please my advice would be, please be respectful of their time and be specific in your requests, and kind of use your commercial acumen. A lot of you will have been in business for some time now. Treat others how you'd like to be treated. And please kind of come to them with a genuine request after you've done some research into the business, into maybe the job they're doing. Just kind of really think about that beforehand. That kind of answers that one. In terms of applying for internships right now, if you're talking about pre-MBA internships, you can, but we don't support you with pre-MBA internships, I'm afraid. It's just we do not have capacity to work with admits such as yourselves, unfortunately. We would love to help, but unfortunately we can't advertise anything to you or support with that, not right now anyway. I'd say that I've seen another question around, is it helpful to get a pre-MBA internship? It can be, definitely. It's something good to have on your CV, I'd say, especially if you're looking to move into the impact space in particular. If you can get maybe a volunteering role before you're coming on your MBA, or you have time to do something like that in a sector you're interested in, by all means go for it. In terms of, I've seen a couple around here on Finance Lab, John, in terms of process, there is, we send out information to the students, don't we, to get them to apply for a certain date, is that correct?
Yeah, the Finance Lab is run by the director of the Finance Lab, a gentleman called John Gilligan. He will advertise, I guess, relatively shortly his own process. So that will usually you'll be usually made aware of that as soon as John is ready to sort of pull the trigger on next year's events. He will email you or communicate with you directly. The process normally consists of working through various modules of Wall Street Prep. You have to pass some of the Wall Street Prep exams. I think you have to write a short piece on why you want to do the lab, that type of thing as well. And then John selects the people for the lab. But don't worry about getting communication on it. John will do that directly to all students interested in it.
Thanks, John. We can see a question here. I'll do 2 more questions before I go back to the slides, just to keep things moving. Do we have sort of regional career specialists in more niche areas such as Africa or Latin America? In summary, yes. We extensively use an alumni network, as well as John mentioned, our industry advisors. So these are people, as John said, that aren't employed by the school, but maybe our ex-students, alumni or friends of the school, who will be able to have connections or give you insights into those areas. So we do have people within those. And I'm going to jump on now to the next slide to keep us going and come back to questions. So finally, as we've been through global industry, finance and consulting careers, impact careers, and as you've seen from a previous slide, this touches on all of our teams, if that makes sense. So we will have impact investing, we will have finance, as well as consulting. We are still here to support you with the impact career side of things. one thing I would say that is really good is the connections we have with our Skoll Centre, which is an internal network at the school of employees, where they look to organise various events such as impact-related events, having impact-related employers, treks, that kind of thing. So we support everyone is kind of hopefully the message you take from this. So this, apologies that this is quite a complicated slide, but hopefully this will put some of the questions which I've seen into a bit more context as well. So one thing I will say is you are on campus with us for around sort of 12 months, but you need to be thinking of this as kind of an 18 to 21 month program, if I'm perfectly honest. So you can see at the top there in red, we have our pre-arrival Oxford Saïd Careers Academy. This will be available to you from June, and it's, for me, it's imperative that you do start doing and running through the sessions on there for pre-arrival. And these are, it's all delivered online for you on our canvas. You will get logins to this when the time is right. So we'll be prompting you with the various kind of emails that will come out to you before you join us. So this has everything from CV writing, networking, self-reflection in terms of where you want to go. So it's kind of, if you do this before you come to campus, you are going to be in so much of a better position than if you start it when you're here. I'm telling you now, Michaelmas is crazy in terms of what you're going to be doing. You're going to want to get involved in social activities. You're going to want to join business networks. You're going to want to get to know everyone you can. You're going to want to meet employers. And by setting yourself up from June, by running through these sessions, having some self-reflection, thinking about your CV, thinking about your career narrative, it's going to make your journey from a career standpoint so much easier. Because it is that 12 months you're here, it is a busy old time, I can tell you that. So please do look at this before you come to campus and get involved in those sessions. Run through them. I appreciate sometimes the videos can be a little bit repetitive, so I wouldn't advise you spend a day doing it all. You might go a little bit crazy, but do please look at that and get yourself sorted. When we kind of come to on campus, so when you're here from September, we have MBA launch, we call it. So that is kind of, you will spend kind of a week with our programs team getting to grips with all the systems and getting to grips with everything. You then typically, and this is still to be confirmed, but I think it's pretty safe to say, you will then spend sort of at least 4 days with career development, and that will be kicking off your journey around CV writing in more detail, networking. We bring in a whole host of external providers that we spend a hell of a lot of money on to get you guys up to speed on a number of different areas. They help with your leadership skills, the career foundations areas, which kind of you need to get started with. Moving on from launch, which is really the on-campus side there, Michaelmas, Hilary and Trinity terms, we run these 3 development programs here, which the Career Foundations program, which runs through Michaelmas, ensuring that it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's career foundations. It's giving you the basics you need to succeed and take you on your career development journey, because this is a very personal time for you that you're going to be going through. The Consulting Development program, again, which will be helping to support those of you who are looking to go into those consulting careers, with a whole host of workshops, employer sessions. And the Talent Development program, which is this term actually, so we don't ram it all into Michaelmas for you, but to get people up to speed as quickly as we can, it does come thick and fast. And then it's not just about supporting where you're on campus. You can see our capstone MBA alumni program. Many of you, and this is, if I'm perfectly honest, an anxious time for students at the moment, given the time of year we're at, because big employers have come to campus. You haven't secured your dream job, and those of you who are looking at experience hiring may not be hired until September and maybe as late as March, sort of the following year. But we are here to continually provide you with an alumni program to ensure you're still in contact with employers. We're still helping you with applications. We're still giving you support. So this is why, when I mentioned at the start, it really is longer than a 12-month program. and you need to be prepared for that. And not everything is going to happen where you're on campus, but this is why we extend it to pre-arrival and capstone, to give you as much support as we possibly can.
Yeah, and there's some data around, to evidence that. There's a good proportion of the class each year that are successful even after the program's finished. Up through to sort of the succeeding February or March. And when I say successful, I do mean successful. Getting good jobs with good firms. It's not as if you're scrabbling around for seconds or anything like that. It's they're still good jobs. And if you think about it, you're doing a 1-year program. Some of you will be trying to transition in that 1-year program. That's a tough and a big ask. It's not an easy thing to do. And many students find that they are just more ready, more mature. They've thought about things a little bit more closely. They've experienced things more at the end of their program, and are much more ready for the job market than they are when they first arrive. So James is right. You need to look at this as a 21-month program, really, rather than a 12-month program, and you'll find you get better and better as you mature through the process, if you like. And just on the right-hand side there, we've touched on some of these already. Again, this is our attempt to give you as much practical experience and flavour of the things you aspire to as we possibly can. I won't go through them all again, but there are a few there that lend themselves to the impact space. For example, the Impact Investing Bootcamp, the Impact Lab, which is actually a programme run by the Skoll Centre. The entrepreneurship pathway for those of you thinking of startups, that type of thing.
Cool, thanks, John. And yeah, we've got a whole host of co-curricular there. I've seen a couple of questions around Finance Lab and acceptance rate. I don't think there's really an acceptance rate. There's just a limited number of spaces in the room. Roughly how many students a year are on the lab, John?
150 to 160, but that includes the Masters of Financial Economics students. So normally there's about 100 MBAs on the programme. Now, many of those do start and don't finish because they find it's just not for them, or it's too intense for them, or the work, the time commitment is too much. And many students apply for the lab expecting it to be the sort of panacea to all their financial ills and the solution to where they want to go in life. The lab is good, there's no doubt about that, but it's very good for particular things, and that is the sort of transactional side of M&A, investment banking and private equity. It's not as good for other things. So the market side, sales, trading, research, asset management, buy side generally. It is competitive because we always get more people applying for it than there are seats. Thus the various hurdles that you need to jump over in order to get a seat. But generally speaking, I would say, well, when I used to select, I don't now because John Gilligan does it himself, thank goodness. But when I used to select, we probably had about 260 applicants for, in those days, sort of 160 places. So that's you can see it's not a given.
Cool, thanks, John. And well, obviously we will email out when it's time to apply for that, and give you ideas of what you need to be including and giving you details of the application process. As I said, that is John Gilligan's bag, and he will be communicating with you closer to the time. So I don't really want to go into too much more detail on how to get onto the lab, if I'm honest. Okay, excellent. So talent development program, John, do you want to quickly have a chat about
that? Yes, we've touched on it already. It tends to these days to happen in the Trinity term, which is the final term, the summer term. And it's all about developing the sort of soft skills, if you like, that go and with an MBA and which employers are attracted by. These are not things that we've made up. 2-3 years ago now, we went out to our employers across the different industry sectors and said, what is it, guys, that you, from a soft skills point of view, really seek in your MBA hiring? And so the talent development program was structured around the answers to those questions. We've categorized them as deliver, grow, empower, influence, a whole series of different skills and workshops and ability to work with executive coaches and that type of thing that you can sign up to and take advantage of, and lots of people do.
Cool, thanks, John. And really, this slide kind of really is sort of reinforcing the positive steps you can take now to kind of start the ownership of your career and how you can get started. So these are just kind of some little tips that we've kind of pulled together from a team and from our point of view. So business acumen, especially kind of reading business newspapers and setting yourself up for alerts, updates, subscribing to webinars about the industry you want to be in is really key, especially within, I'd say, the consulting sphere and probably finance. Would you say, John, as well?
Absolutely. The more you just get into the habit, if you're thinking about finance as a career, get into the habit of reading a top quality journal on a daily and weekly basis. Just give yourself depth as well as breadth to your reading and get into the habit of it. Because I can tell you, as a recruiter of senior executives, and particularly when it comes to campus recruitment, you can tell somebody who has immersed themselves in their field of interest very, very quickly and very, very easily, as opposed to somebody who's picked up, let's say, the Financial Times a week before the interview. The more informed, the more opinions you have, the better you will perform at interview, either formally or informally. So just get into the habit, whichever sector you're going into, immerse yourself in it, get to know it, take advantage of this horrible disruption we're going through at the moment. Read about it. What impact is it having? What sectors is it having more impact on? Which sectors will be suffer longer term when we come out the other end? Have an opinion. Once you're an Oxford student, I'm afraid the idea that people aren't testing for intelligence, that's a sort of given. That's off the table. What they expect, however, are some people who can think and have an opinion, and you won't be able to do that unless you immerse yourself in some of this stuff.
Great, thanks, John. And again, following interesting firms or influencers to kind of look at expanding your sector. And again, this kind of comes back to maybe alumni, or there are business leaders in certain areas you want to be looking at. And again, as John said, keeping up to date on current affairs, what's happening, having an opinion is great. Sometimes an interview, they won't want you to sit on the fence. If you want to sit on the fence, have a compelling argument for both sides to show that you've actually done some thinking, or just sort of a follower, that you want to commit and give more, if that makes sense. Do dive into your motivations and why you want to do things as well. The classic kind of, why do you want to work for us, as a question, which is pretty loaded, but you'd be surprised how many employers will ask that, even in like the pre-interview questions when they're kind of having a chat to you on the phone. And if you can't give a compelling story, say you apply to Google and say, oh, well, you're a big tech firm. If that's your answer, don't even bother replying. You need to have a real personal connection or a personal story as to why you think that's a firm you want to work for. What have you been impressed with that they've done in the news? What research have you done, and how have you thought about why you want to work for that business? And looking at your motivations as well. Sorry, John. Looking at those motivations in terms of going through the online careers academy before you start. There is a reflections piece in there, and it's kind of quite useful. Sometimes students have taken that bit and gone, oh, I didn't realise that. Oh, that's a really good way of thinking about it. So hopefully will kind of broaden your mind a little bit as to how that can work moving forward. So one thing I would say as well, as I mentioned earlier, just sort of some tips from me before we go on to full-on Q&A, is if you think that there might be a program deadline coming up as soon as you're starting, make sure you know about it. The excuse of people starting, oh, I've missed a deadline, I forgot, I didn't look at that. When you come and say that to us, that makes us think you don't really care about getting a job in finance or consulting if you haven't looked into the deadlines of the companies you want to work for. So please bear that in mind. Do look early, especially with finance and consulting. Global industry, not so much. I can link this into a question I saw as well around, do offers kind of come out in September before we've really done much? Say, for instance, you want to apply for Amazon, you will have your offer before Christmas. So that's how quickly some of these big tech companies move. They come in, they do their presentation, you apply for the job, and literally with Amazon, our relationship is you apply, you bypass the CV screen because you're an Oxford student, and then it's straight into interview. So make sure you've kind of thought about that as well. So just think about deadlines, check deadlines before you're coming on campus. Yeah, the Careers Academy, get it done. And basically we are here to provide you with the tools you need to do this. We are not going to be here doing everything for you. That's not what we're here, because we want to give you lifelong career development. So we teach you now, and then in 10 years you can apply those same principles to find your next job and the job after that. So we don't give you hand holding to a certain extent, but we obviously give you what you need. So I think, is there anything else you'd like to say based on that, John, or should we move on to Q&A?
No, let's give these guys some time for Q&A. Yeah.
So I just kind of saw something here, one-to-one career counselling. Yes, we do that, but not before your MBA, I'm afraid. We simply don't have the capacity to offer counselling before you come on campus. I'd say the caveat with that is, say, for instance, you've been to, and this happened last year with Amazon. Sorry, I keep using Amazon, it's one of my clients. At the Forte conference, they met a number of MBA students who were going to Oxford, and they were interviewing before you were starting on campus. If that is you and you are interviewing before you're starting for a post-MBA job, do get in touch with us, because that's something we can help support with. There's not going to be huge numbers. We'd obviously love to support you before you're on campus, but we simply don't have the capacity, I'm afraid. So hopefully that answers that one.
Can I just interject? If you've got an interview coming up or an application, certainly in financial services, you know, do reach out before your arrival, because I know that some of the Americans and maybe some of the Asians, some of the programs will start earlier than your arrival. Ben and I are happy to help you with that. Just the more generic stuff would need to wait until Oxford, but if it's something specific, do reach out, and we're happy to try and help you with that.
I've just seen a quick question I can answer very quickly for me in here. Which term is the career fairs on? We run one a term in, so we will have one in November, then February, then another one in May, or it might fall, the one in February might fall into March, but yes, we have at least one a term for you to hopefully have employers. Typically our careers fairs will have a few larger employers, so we curate these careers fairs to have around 20 companies at, something like that, 15 to 20, and it's a mix of all different sectors, from finance to global industry to consulting to impact, to try and give you kind of the best possible chance of meeting those people. I don't know if you wanted to pick up any. I've got one here around program hires in the US, John, for investment banking. They seem to give their offers maybe in line with the 2-year MBA. I know you mentioned earlier the investment banking sphere is quite small in the UK.
It is, yeah, and you're right. I can't see the question, but in the US they do tend to focus on the 2-year MBA, so that makes it tough. for Oxford students who are just doing the one-year MBA, particularly obviously for those who are making trying to make some sort of transition from another industry into, let's say, investment banking, which is why networking will be really valuable to you even before you arrive. Even you may not be able to use it before you arrive, but you certainly will be able to use it once you finish. So the longer you can maintain a relationship that's already kick-started before your arrival, the better. But yes, the US employers also tend to be quite parochial in the way they hire MBAs. So they tend to look at students from US schools rather than international schools. Not all the time. We had 2 people join Goldman Sachs in New York last year. But again, they had made big efforts to network their way into those roles. Thus the importance of networking.
Thanks, John. I've seen a question here from Palak around career teams supporting networking and internships in niche sectors within finance, such as restructuring and turnaround. John, would it be fair to say we do have networks in all of these areas, which we would hope we can help you with in those, even if it's very specific within finance?
Yeah, I think the message here is that we will do whatever we can to help you with your networking and introducing you to people. But there's a big caveat around this, and the caveat is we don't recommend you as like a recruitment agency or anything like that. We point you and signpost you in the right directions. So Palak, for example, restructuring and turnaround, we have a very good relationship with Houlihan Lokey. In fact, an hour ago now, I was on the phone to their recruitment team because they're trying to hire in Dubai and Hong Kong at the moment and want some of our MBAs. We have 2 MBAs joining their internship program in London in the summer. But what we don't do is just say, hey, so-and-so at Houlihan Lokey, meet Palak. What we do is say, these are the people you should be trying to reach out to and speak to. So yes, we'll do whatever we can, but we don't just blindly, as you wouldn't with your own contacts, recommend people that we, unless we get to know them pretty well.
Cool, thanks, Sean. I've seen a question here from Christina around percentage of the class say get jobs via the help of the career team. We like to say everyone, but in reality and in all fairness, there are some people who don't need that. Maybe they have got contacts before they join the MBA. What I'm going to say here is, please just come and see us and interact with us. In terms of help from us in career development, comes in many different formats. Some of you may just need signposting to job boards, but we'd like you to even if you think you've got an interview kind of nailed or you've got it in the bag, you know you're going to be okay, do come and see us or speak to us, just in case we have any inside tips or an inside track that we can give you on interviewing. So
yeah, I think that's a very good point, James. Inevitably, every year there's students that I never meet. And they sort themselves out, and in that sense you could say I haven't helped them at all, but there is a huge amount of expertise in and around the careers team, and it would just be silly not to take some advantage of that. I'll give you a very recent example. I spoke to a current student 2 days ago, pretty agitated about where he's headed, particularly now that the coronavirus is putting a bit of a dampener on immediate recruitment appetite. And I'd met him a couple of times when he first arrived and hadn't really heard from him since. And he told me he got to final rounds at 3 hedge funds in the last month and hadn't quite made it to getting an offer. And I said, well, who were you mocking with? Who were you practicing with? Who was hearing your story? Oh, nobody. Now, fine, but the point is that I've been here 5 years. my industry advisors have been here 15 years. They're helping students every year, again and again. They do have some expertise to lend out. So do make yourself known, as James says, and then make an informed decision of whether it's going to be useful to you or not. But don't. It's just stupidity to leave some of these resources untouched.
Cool. Thanks, John. That's a really good point. I think definitely. Please speak to us. We are here to try and help. Just picking up some questions which I can quickly answer. Some people talking about processes to get involved in the consulting development programs or various programs. That will be communicated to you through emails, which will come in the coming weeks and months before your arrival, and some of it won't actually kick off until you're here, but when you're here we'll be able to give you more information on that.
There aren't the same sort of hurdles for the consulting development program as there are for the finance lab. It's more about you having, being advised, strongly advised, to do the sort of background reading and prep pre-arrival, but there's no sort of exams or anything you need to take.
Cool. So let me just, sorry, I'm just going down and seeing what's been answered and what's not. Sorry guys, just trying to get to grips with some of them. Just a quick question I've spotted about access the alumni directory, a way to get in touch with alumni. LinkedIn is the best way to do it, if I'm honest. I think that was Reiki's question. It's when you are here, we will be giving you a session on LinkedIn as part of launch. We also then give you access immediately to the alumni LinkedIn community, which is where job applications are posted, where you can reach out to various people in various alumni chapters around the world. So yes, you will have access to the LinkedIn is the best way to do it, if I'm perfectly honest. We will have our own connections, which may well be suitable to introduce you to at certain points of the year, but also you'll be networking through your own networks to get that done. Let me have a quick look. Oh, sorry, that person's gone. John, I've got a question here around investment banking career path. Some are applying for summer internships or program hiring during Michaelmas term. when does that all kick from Ian? When does all that kick in?
What time is that? What time was that question, James?
2:17, John. It was one of the first ones.
Sorry, let me just go back up to the top.
Again, I've got a question here while John's having a quick look from Sanya. The Impact Lab, it will all be explained to you when you're here. So don't worry about it at this point. You'll have plenty of opportunities to get involved with that. Especially, I've seen a couple of questions as well around sort of the OBN networks. Those are all sorted by our programs team when you're on campus. So don't worry about anything like that at the moment. That'll be absolutely fine. Okay. A very good question from Christina here. Sorry, John, have you found that? Did you want to answer that one?
Yeah, no, I found it. Ian, hi. Yes, you'd apply for the summer associate programs. They will go live probably in late September, October, and some banks hire on a rolling basis, i.e. they take good people when they see them, so there is an advantage in applying early. Others will wait until the deadline's advertised, and they normally start interviewing December, January, and offering in sort of February time. So it's not, you don't have to be applying before you arrive for the certainly for the London-based positions. And it's, as far as the management associate programs are concerned, they don't really exist in the banks over here. Just to give you a flavour of the competition in the London market, there are just 5 banks that now still run MBA structured programs for investment banking. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Citi, Credit Suisse, and Bank of America. And each of those banks will have, 10 to 15 seats max available each year. So it's a pretty stiff competition because they look at both UK and European and other international, including US schools, to fill those seats.
Cool. Thanks, John. Just in a question here from Krishna with regards to experience of hiring during sort of the 2008 crisis that could be useful for planning post coronavirus. If I'm honest, I'm not sure how much that would help looking back past data for recruiting, thinking about it just due to the way we use technology and how things have moved on. I suppose coming from my experience of speaking to employers over the past week, hiring is continuing as normal where it can. At the moment, especially for everyone all of my larger clients have been very supportive in terms of saying to me, university relations and recruitment is still very much high up on our list of agendas, and we're not looking to stop this. I think that things have we've adapted, and we are adapting to online sort of teaching at the moment just to help. We are providing lots more services online. When you're here as a student, hopefully by this point we'll be in a lot better position and we'll be welcoming you to campus. But regardless, we have redundancies in place, and if you like, the class that are on at the moment, they are our guinea pigs, but everything's going very well in terms of that, and we're adapting, we're moving forward. Companies are still trying to remain positive. Businesses are still growing. It's not all doom and gloom. I think that technology has been kind of the answer to that in a lot of areas. So hopefully that kind of covers off. I've seen a couple of questions around various kind of recruiting in certain parts of the world. So how is your recruiting? How is the job market in Asia? How are things kind of progressing over there? Our relationships with businesses, as you'll hear John mentioning, we had sort of people going to New York. I have clients in London, Singapore, Sydney, New York, San Francisco. Our connections and outreach with many businesses are global. So don't worry if you're anxious about coming from a certain area and wanting to return or wanting to remain in the UK. We have these connections, which we hope will be useful for you, and we will be kind of utilising while you're on campus.
And a number of institutions, particularly in financial services, often have roadshows from their Asian offices in London, coming to London, and sometimes coming to the business school as well, to engage with the Asian population in the MBA and other programs. So it's harder, clearly, because we're here and they're there, but we do as much as we can. We try to think of it as a global marketplace, not a UK centric one.
Thanks, John. So the question here around, do we provide support sessions from career development standpoint, not just for help with interviews? Yes, of course. So we kind of do career direction and visioning kind of on a one-to-one basis. If maybe you're feeling a little bit lost or you haven't got your plan A job, definitely. We are here to support you, just not with interviews, where we are here on a wider basis.
Yeah. It's a good point, actually, and one that we didn't really touch on during the slideshow. We talked a lot about workshops and treks and things like that. The core of what we do is one-to-one. So you'll go onto the system, which is called Oscar, and you'll see a whole drop down of people that you can book up to meet on a one-to-one basis, both for chats, for crying on people's shoulders, for guidance on specific issues, for mock interviews. A lot of it is done via a one-to-one basis. It's amazing support, really, in terms of its volume, and we didn't make enough of it in the presentation, so I apologise for that. So yeah, the bread and butter of what we do is one-to-ones, really.
Cool. Thanks, John. Just looking at some others here. I don't know if there's anything you can see that you want to pick out there, John. I'm just thinking of time as well, Sam, because I know that many people might have things to shoot off.
We might have to wrap it up there. I'm really sorry, guys, but thank you. You've all sent through so many questions. We really appreciate you being so engaged, and it's really nice to see lots of familiar names of people that we've met at previous interview days or open days. So thank you so much for joining and sending through your questions. If you do have anything specific that we haven't been able to get to, I'm just sending the email address to everyone. So hopefully everyone can see that. And if there is something that, if you listen back to the recording maybe and something still didn't quite answer your question, please just get in touch with us and we'll just try and give you a little bit more clarity. But a lot of the questions around, how will you find out about Impact Lab or Finance Lab, don't stress. I know you really want to sink your teeth into the MBA, and I know getting the offer is really exciting and you don't want to wait until September. But, all those communications will generally start to come over the summer. The programs team will essentially take you away from our recruitment and admission side of things, and you'll be fully fledged in the programs team side of processes, and they'll start sending you communications from about early June onwards, and that will include information about how you can start applying for things like the Finance Lab before you do join, and I think the Impact Lab and a few of the other optional co-curriculars are things that you can apply for once you actually do start the program in September. So don't stress too much, but please don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can answer any questions now. Anything else to add, John or James?
No, I don't think so. Happy to answer more specific questions offline, as you said, Sam. But thanks for engaging with it. We've enjoyed it.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, everyone. And I hope that you've seen in the communication that was sent to you all yesterday, especially everyone who got their stage 3 offer on Friday, congratulations. So we will be hosting another webinar with Liz Starbuck-Greer on Monday next week for those of you who've just received your offer. And obviously everyone from stage 1 and 2, you've already had your little welcome session with Liz, but you're most welcome to join on Monday if you want as well. The link to register for that is on the right-hand side of your applicant portal. So yeah, feel free to just keep in touch with us over the coming weeks and let us know if you have any questions. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us and for being so engaged and clearly so eager to just dive into all things Oxford MBA, which is really lovely to see.
Yeah, thanks guys. We answered as many of your questions as we could, but like I said, anything specific, do reference the email address that Sam's going to send out.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.